Hello and welcome to the Digital Classroom. My name is Jamie Benedict here with more tools and techniques for the digital curriculum. One of the really hot topics right now in education is this idea of mastery learning, which basically ties to teaching to the standards. What are the students learning and how are they demonstrating that based on the standards for your class? And as teachers, we need to be able to track this so that we know where students are progressing and where they're falling behind and what we need to do to make those students understand those concepts and keep them caught up as we progress throughout the year. In your learning management system, you have the tools available to monitor this, and I'm going to take some time today to show you how you can use this in Canvas. But I know that the other learning management programs also have this available. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys here. And we're going to take a look at where we are in Canvas. So if we're on the home screen, which is basically where everything starts when you open up, and this is a class that I use strictly for the purposes of doing tutorial videos like this one. What we want to do is on this left-hand side, we want to come down here and click on Outcomes. And we are going to set up some course outcomes. There's a couple of ways to do this, and I've done this, I've tried this a couple of times. I've tried to do an import, and I want to show this to you, but I'm not sure that you'll be able to do it. So with Canvas anyway, you can import your standards. So it's going to ask for you to upload what's called a CSV file. Here's the template that is used to create that CSV file. And I followed all of the directions. If you go into the process, and I'll click back here. If you click into outcomes, you can actually see the CSV file, and I'm happy to send the template to anybody who wants it, but I followed everything that I thought this was saying. I've even talked to Canvas a couple of times about this particular process, and what I've been told is even though I followed all of this and I've entered all of my standards in here, and I've saved everything correctly. I've put the format that I want to use. I've put the mastery level and all of that. I was told that the way that my county has everything set up, or my school district has everything set up, is that I'm not allowed to do this. This has to be done at a higher level than I am at. So I spent a lot of time putting all of this together, copying and pasting and putting all of this in here, and it really didn't pay off for me. So I'm a little bit disappointed about that. But either way, this was going to be a time-consuming process. You might want to just go with route number 2 that I'm going to show you here, so that you save yourself a little bit of the headache rather than trying to do all the work and test it and see if it helps out. So in the outcomes, the first thing that I have is in the course outcomes here, and this was predetermined by my county. I was able to click on these course outcomes, and if I come over here and click find, I can click on the account standards and click on this hierarchy. So that's Orange County Public Schools. I want to look at the Florida standards, and pre-programmed, or somebody had already loaded these, I have the Common Core State Standards, the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards, the Sunshine State Standards, the Sunshine State Standards grade level expectations, and voluntary pre-K standards as part of this. And if I click into any one of these, I'll use Next Generation Sunshine State Standards, but you can see I've got 4 subject areas. I can click into mathematics, and the hierarchy just keeps going. So this is all of K through middle school. If I click down here to reading, you've got K through 12, and you can click in, and here's the 9th and 10th grade standards for English language arts. Here is the 11th and 12th grade standards, if I want to go back, I can simply just scroll back. I can click on science. And again, I've got K8 and social studies, I've got K12. So I can look at the standards here for every subject area, and I can use these. They're available to me even as a business teacher. I have access to all of this if I see that standards are crossing over. But since I want to make sure that I have my own standards in here for my classes, I did a little bit of pre-setup, and you can set up your own standards simply by adding a group. So I'm in this first section here. I can click and add a group, and I can name this whatever I want. My group I named entrepreneurship because that's one of the subjects that I teach. If I click on this, I can add, if I click on this, I can add another group here. So small business ownership, I can add that. And then I can add outcomes for each of these. So within entrepreneurship, if you teach one class or two classes or four classes or whatever it is that you have, you can set up a group for each one. And then once you click in there, you can add standards for each group that you've created. So I've already created 3 here. And where I got those is very simply, I'm going to go ahead and scroll over. I'm going to pull up my entrepreneurship standards here. And I just scrolled down through. Here's the broad standards, the frameworks that are set up there. And then I've got all of the standards and benchmarks right here for the class. So if I want to add one of these, I can simply just click on add outcome. And this is what I ended up doing in my CSV file, but I could do it simply here and save myself a lot of time. So I've already loaded the first 3 standards. I'm just going to highlight, copy, paste. I can give this a second name if I want to. I really don't need to do that. And then I'm going to repaste the standard right there for the description, and I'll show you where that comes up also just in case. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to come over here, I'm going to scroll down, and I have to decide where I want mastery set. Do I want it at 3, 4, or 5? And I'm going to leave it at 3, but you can adjust this if you want to. And then I have to determine how I want mastery measured. The default is what's called decaying average. So what it does is when the students complete this skill, the most recent one gets the highest weight. So if you test them on this particular standard, say 4 times, whatever the most recent score is, that's the one that gets the highest weight, and then everyone below that gets a declining average weight. I'm not a big fan of this one, but you can use that if you want. You can also adjust this, and you could say that the decaying average sets at 85. That way it's monitoring how many times it took them to get there, sort of. You're still giving the most weight to the most recent one, but at the same time, you're still counting in all those attempts to get to that level. And again, this is not my favorite way of doing this. You could do this based on the number of times. How many times did it take them to reach that level? And I like this one. You can either do most recent score, which I like, or you can do highest score. So again, if you test them on this 4 times and they score a 3 the first time, a 4 the second time, a 4 the third time, and a 5 the 4th time, now you've got that highest level of mastery. And you can reflect that in your grading. So I use highest score for this when I do mastery learning, and I go ahead and click save. And let's just go through this one more time so we can see how this setup is done. I'm going to click on, I've created my group, I've created a subgroup, and now I am going to add another outcome to this subgroup. I'm going to click on outcome. I'm going to come down here to 01.05. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to paste it a second time in there, and I'm going to leave my mastery at 3 and change this to highest score and click save. And now I've got 5 standards set. So this is the foundation for everything that you're going to be doing, and you need to have all of your skills set in Canvas before you can use them in your assignments and in your quizzes. So I would suggest taking the time up front to just go ahead and paste all of these in there. It is time consuming, but it's worth the effort. So now let's see how we're going to use these once we've established our approach for this. I want to track through the assignments what my students are doing, and I've already got 3 assignments set up in here, and I'm going to click on the first assignment, and it's a fake assignment. It's one that I set up for this tutorial, and I'm going to go ahead and click on my rubric, and what I want to do is first of all delete out this first standard because it's not necessary. And then I want to come in here and I want to find an outcome. And it's going to pull up my outcomes box. So I have access to those original course outcomes that we talked about. But I'm going to go to my course outcomes. So I've got entrepreneurship, small business ownership, and then I'm going to select this one. So I've got a rubric set up at 5 points, 3 points meeting expectations, which is mastery, and 0 points being not meeting expectations. And again, I've set this up for most recent score, and I'm just going to click on import, and this is now added to my rubric. I want to find another outcome, and maybe I'm doing number 2. And again, I'm clicking on import and find outcome. And probably with most assignments, you're not just going to go down through and have the luxury of adding your first 5 outcomes to this, but it doesn't really matter. You can scroll through and find whichever outcome you want to incorporate. And the reason that I like copying and pasting the entire thing is if you just use a number here, 01.01, I have to go back and then look at what that means. But if I'm looking at this, I can see, okay, this means define entrepreneurship, and it gives me that description up here, and it tells me what I should be looking for. And you can add to those descriptions so that you know exactly what it is you're looking for and whether or not you want to incorporate that here. So I now have a 25-point scale, but you can see that this one, the original assignment was set up at 15 points. That's okay. What I want to do is come down here, and I'm going to check this box here that says use this rubric for assignment grading. And I'm going to click on create rubric. So now it's saying that your scores are different. Do you want to leave them different or do you want to change it? I'm going to go ahead and change it. So now this matches this, and that's fine. If you ever need to go back in, you can always go in and edit your rubric. So if you want to add your other criteria here, so you want to don't post outcomes results to Learning Mastery Gradebook, and I'll show you what that is in just a minute. Remove points from the rubric and so on. If you want to do all of that, you certainly can, but you can just leave it as is to start out. So then what happens is when the student turns something in, I'm going to click on SpeedGrader, and I am going to go into the gradebook here, and here's my rubric. And so as I go down through and I look and go, okay, did the student define entrepreneurship accurately? Did they meet expectations? Did they exceed my expectations? I'm going to say that they met expectations on that standard. That one's pretty easy since it's just definition. That's lower level for Bloom's taxonomy. And they've got research, innovations, and the names of biographies of famous entrepreneurs past and present. I'm going to say that they probably hit a 3 there. And as I go down through these, I can just give a score. I can say that they didn't meet this one. I can also put in my own score. So it's not a 0. They didn't not meet expectations, but they didn't quite meet the expectations. So this will show me where they're at. And I can put a 4 in here. So currently I've got 14 out of 25 points. I'm going to click save, and you can see that score is reflected right there. Now, how do we use this to monitor where students are? I'm going to click on the gradebook in the upper left-hand corner, and there's my score for that first assignment, 14 out of 15, and I'm going to delete these out. These are unnecessary currently, and that will show us what the current grade is for the class. So the 56%, that's not really a total accurate assessment of this student. They have mastered a couple of the skills, so I want to make sure that that's reflected. But how do I know what they've mastered? So I'm going to click on this grade book here and click on Learning Mastery, and I can see where each student is in this. Now, I don't have any students populated for this right now because it's a test class, so I only have the test student, but I can see where this student ranks, and I know that I've got to go back and figure out how to demonstrate this for the student. And I can see very quickly, without even looking at the scores, the red, and determine, here's the course averages. I can determine which skills the whole class is struggling with, or which skills each individual student is struggling. And I know where I need to go back and make adjustments to my teaching. I can also export this report so that I can look at it on my own time, first of all, and on a different style. I can export this. I believe it exports as an Excel file, so you can just scroll down through and you can sort it at that point so that you can see, which kids are mastering and which ones aren't. Now, obviously, if they're getting a skill, then we can move on. If they're struggling with a skill, we need to go back and take a look at how we're teaching that. And that might mean that we're pushing some students ahead with some individualized instruction and going back and working with students with some individualized instruction, which is great with a learning management system because I can adjust what students are doing individually by setting up different activities in Canvas for them. I can also do this by looking at quizzes. So we've set this up for assignments. You will have to do a rubric for every assignment, but it's worth it to get this data. And I can do this for the quizzes here as well. Here's one of the things that we have to think about with our quizzes. Canvas adapted a couple of years ago, and for those of us that had been in here previously and had already been using it, we kind of held on to the old method of doing things. And so I have what's called a classic quiz. I imported this from another class. So when I go into this classic quiz, I can look at my questions for this. This one happened to be a test that I give to one of my classes, and I've got lots of questions in there, and I really don't want to retype all of these. This would be an absolute mess if I had to redo every single quiz. So what I have the ability to do here is, let's go back out of this quiz, and let's get back to where we were in our quizzes here. So here is the original quiz that I imported. Over here on the right-hand side, you have 3 dots. I'm going to click on these 3 dots, and I'm going to click on Migrate. I'm going to migrate this to the new quiz version that Canvas created. The classic version doesn't allow you to add standards to each test item. The new version does. Here's the difference. They got the classic version has the white spaceship, and the migrated version, or the new version of Canvas quizzes, has the dark spaceship here. So now when I click on this quiz, I've got this in my migrated quizzes. I'm going to throw it into assignments real quick, and I've got all of my setup stuff here. But what I want to do is click on Build. And because I migrated this and I didn't have to redo all of my questions, I still have all of my questions listed in here. But what I want to do is I want to come over here and attach outcomes. So I'm going to click on this outcomes, and I'm going to select this. And again, we get our drop down. So I'm in the DECA class, my entrepreneurship group. I'm going to click on my small business ownership, and here are the standards that I want to attach to this quiz or this assignment. So now I've got all 5 standards entered here, and it's whatever standards you select for a quiz. And then I do have to go through and align an outcome. So I'm going to click on the edit button here. Let me go back and show that again. So we're at build. I'm going to add my outcomes, which you can see I've already added here, but I'm going to add my outcomes there. And then for each question, I'm going to go down through and I'm going to click on the edit. And I'm going to scroll down here, and I can tell it to shuffle choices. I can vary points by answer, or I can show on-screen calculator. If you're a math teacher, this is very helpful. And then I can click on this drop down to align to outcomes, and I can just tell it to add that outcome. And I'll come down to this question, and don't forget to click done. And then I'm going to come down to this question, and again, just adjust my settings, align the outcome. And I'm going to put an outcome for each one so that when the students answer these questions, again, I can go back into my grade book and it will show me, okay, they did understand this one, so this is where they're at as far as their level of mastery on that subject. I can't do that if I don't add outcomes to this. I could, but it's going to take me a lot more work. If I set this up and let the grading system do the work for me, then I'm going to save myself a lot of time in being able to track where my students are. And this is becoming a very common method of tracking students in our classes and adjusting grades and so on. And I do think when we look at assignments, I think we do have to think about what are we asking of our students? Are we asking them to show us what they've learned, or are we just grading for completion? Are we grading for the fact that they followed directions? Or do we really want to find out what they know in here? I want to thank you all for joining me in the digital classroom today. Mastery learning is something that we do need to be focusing on and monitoring our students' progress throughout the year. By setting up in Canvas ahead of time, we'll be able to track those students all year long and see how they're progressing and mastering our content. I'm Jamie Benedict for the Digital Classroom, and until next time, class is dismissed.